Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today's video is particularly exciting because it is a little sneak peek of the upcoming release. So today I am going to be using the Crafty Friends Stamps and Dies Sentiments and then the Maker's Mix Stencils and Dies, which is aptly named for the entire release, which is Maker's Mix, if that gives you any idea as to what might be coming. So here I am doing like two styles of stenciling, and this I'm kind of lazy when it comes to stenciling. Honestly, like I just want to do all the things at one time. I'm very much a like assembly line crafter if I'm making multiples. So here I have my white cardstock down on a sticky mat to hold my stencil, and I'm going in and adding in the kind of the base layer colors, the lightest colors. So in the stencil, there is a pair of scissors, there's a label around some yarn. Those are the things that I'm hitting with the kind of cooler gray. With the warmer gray, I'm getting the embroidery hoop or cross stitch, depending upon which one you prefer. The palette for the paint. Was there something else I did? Oh, I used the gray one for the safety pin as well. And then this one is actually the sticky mat that goes inside my stamp wheel. And I'm going to use this one to do the same thing, but this is for the full sets of it. So the other ones like kind of get cut off at the edge. This one I'm doing because this is what I'm going to die cut. This is one of the ones that instead of having like a stencil and a stamp, it has a stencil and a die. And I really like these. We have other ones like this that came out, I think last fall before, I can't remember. One of them is Happy Haunting, which I did use, and that's like more Halloween themed, and another one is Forest Floor, and it's really precious and has like little mushrooms in it. It's adorable. But basically, you can purchase the dies as well as the stencil so that you can cut out portions of the stencil and use them as images, embellishments, what have you. So here what I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm masking off the areas that I don't want to get a specific color. So like down for the watercolor palette or paint palette, I'm masking off the color so that I can do the brush brown. And then on the top, I am masking off the flower portion so that I can do the hoop brown, except for that top part, that little clasp, closure. What do you call it? I don't know. I don't know what it's called. But that one I did in gray, and then I'm going to move them around a bit so I can get the other layers. So if you're not familiar with Honeybee's stencils, they are clear, but they are etched, which means that you can always see the full pattern, but not all of them are cut out, but you can always see the full pattern so that it makes it very easy to line them up. And then here you can see I am switching back and forth. I'm not going to continue to show you that part of it for the whole video, but I wanted you to understand how I tackle it in case you weren't quite sure how you wanted to do it. So basically I just have two sticky mats and I leave the cards on them and I just move the stencils from one to each, from one side to the other and knock out all of the ink blending for each one, while I'm doing it. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you. I did have some snafus. One of them was that I got purple on my hoop when I didn't want it to because I forgot to mask. And then another one was I set a stencil on there that had ink on the back and I didn't realize it. And then I got orange where I didn't want it. You can't see either one of these in the like final product. Oh, in there, I did the brown right over the pink flower. So they're not huge deals, but please know that this method is not foolproof and I am not perfect. So in case you're sitting around thinking it's just me, it's not just you, it's all of us. So I'm just going to go through and do my ink blending to get the like the background panel done. And then we'll talk a little bit more about kind of amping up those images that we die cut out. And also, if you wanted to, I'm going to use them as separate embellishments, but you could die cut them out and then put them back over the stenciling to create a little bit of a different dimension. That might be a fun way to use them as well. So I really like the stencil and the die combination because you guys know me and I'm cheap, and I like having something that will allow me to stretch those things and use them differently. But for me, the star of this show is this sentiment set. So as card makers, crafters, scrapbookers, I have, who was I even talking to? I can't remember who I was talking to. And I was like you need to get a hobby. Like, I have more hobbies than I have time to do them. I have so many hobbies. Also, I've speeded this up, obviously. I know, ink blend this quickly. But like on my list of hobbies is card baking, obviously. Obviously. But I cross stitch. I've tried embroidery. That wasn't really for me. I prefer the cross stitch. I was a scrapbooker. I have made jewelry. I have painted. I have, reading was is still a huge one. So I have like all of these different, I'm clay, air dry clay. I did that for a minute. And some of them, it's not that I wouldn't like to continue on with them. It's just that I have run out of time because I have littles, and a card making now is my full-time job. So this stamp set is so good for us. It's so good for us. I think we talked recently in a video about my neighbors and how I have lovely neighbors and they're wonderful, and then they were moving. So they have moved, which makes me very sad. We have not met our new neighbors yet, though. They have just moved in the last couple of days. But when my neighbors were moving, it obviously prompted us to have a little bit more conversation. And I knew that my neighbor was like a stamper crafter, but I just didn't realize that, what kind of stamper crafter she was. So anyway, when she's cleaning out her stuff, I was walking, Jelly Bean and I were going to get the mail, and we have like those old school mailboxes, not old school, new school mailboxes where they're kind of like all in one box and you got to walk down to get it. Well, it just happens to be right in front of our neighbor's house. So we were going to get the mail, little Jelly Bean and I, and she was pulling out of her driveway and she was like, "Hey, I meant to ask you, like, I have to clean out my craft room. Do you want any of this stuff?" And I was like, "Girl, I cannot take any of your stuff or my husband will have a heart attack. Like, he will go down." But so anyway, it prompted us to start talking about it. So I do think I am going to pick her up this set, as like a welcome to your new craft home room, because it's so perfect. So I know that you're going to love it. I'm not going to tell you all of them because it's only supposed to be a sneak peek, guys. So don't press me, but I will tell you some of them. Obviously, the one that I put on my card says "Crafting fills my heart," and also my entire house. And I love it. It makes me so happy. There's another one in here that is totally accurate, which is "Life is a series of obstacles preventing me from crafting." Yes, it is. It's just like everything else is in my way to get done what I want to get done in my craft room. So there's there's kind of one that are a little bit more on the sweet side, like "Crafting fills my heart," just by itself. And then you can take it, a little bit more on the fun side with, the addition of, and also my entire house. There's one that says "Professional Procrastinator." This is me to a T. Like, I don't know about the rest of y'all. I know there are some, I talked about this in a live, where we did another sneak peek, by the way, in last week's live, and we're going to do another one this Wednesday, because the release, the Maker's Mix release, is Thursday. Thursday, all of these products are going to be available. So if you're watching it before then and getting the little sneak preview, like, hang on, because it's coming. By the end of the week, you'll be able to get this. So anyway, I talked about how I am like a total disaster. There's one in here too that is all, it says I'm creative. You can't expect me to be tidy too. That's me. So we were kind of laughing and joking about it because some crafters, you know, are very much like tidy and they need organization. I am a hurricane. All right, so here you go. On the left-hand side, this is the completed background. On the right-hand side, these are the whole ones that I have ink blended to match. And then I'm pulling out the dies to die cut them out. Now, because we're doing just stenciling, there is no black outline. So when you're lining up the dies, it's going to be almost right exactly along those edges, you know, as we're going. So you want to make sure you take time to line them up and tape them down with some low tack tape. So here's pulling them all out. Now you don't have to do anything else to them because they're stenciled, they're shaded, they're looking very adorable. But we all know how I am, and that I can't leave anything alone. I want my embellishments for my card to stand out from my background. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading with my markers. In this case, I happen to be using my Olo markers. So I, you know, pulled out the cool grays and the warm grays because basically the same colors that I'm blending with are the same colors that I'm going to be using to add some dimension. So for my scissors, I use the cool grays. The side that is tucked underneath, I made a little bit darker, where the side that sits on top, I still use the same cool grays, but I just didn't go as dark. I think with the bottom one, I went out to a C7, and with the one on top, I started the darkest one at a C5. So I'm just blending those out just to give that, like the scissor, a little bit more dimension. And that's all that I'm really going to do with that one until like after we, you know, put it all together. Because, you know, I just said I couldn't help myself. So for the little needles, the little crochet needles, like, see, my niece, my niece-in-law, she's my nephew's fiance, which will be his wife. She's my niece. I'm just calling her my niece. It's easier. So she is a great crocheter. In fact, I believe, I almost think it was Melissa from Honeybee. I'm not 100% positive, but I think maybe it was her, because when I had Caitlin, they sent me a little gift, which was cute. Not a little. I mean, it was quite a bit of stuff. But anyway, it's a crocheted bee, and she loves it. It's her bumblebee. And when she was sleeping with it all the time, the bumblebee's wing started to come undone. And also his eye. His smile. So his wing and his smile was coming undone. So I had asked Rebecca, my niece, I was like, hey, do you think you can fix this? And she was like, yeah, I do think I can. So then we had to tell little Jellybean that the bumblebee went to Dr. Rebecca to be fixed. And she did, in fact, successfully fix him. And we still use him. We just slept with him the other night. Let's talk about the card real quick. So here I'm going through looking for those grays, you know, and adding those shadings here with the hoop. So if you don't cross stitch or you don't embroider, like, the hoop usually pushes the image forward when you're stitching, but there are some like that when you glue it that it basically sits on top of it. So that's why you have that extra shadow layer with the gray. And so I wanted the background to have, like, the background of what the design to have some dimension, but it really is supposed to look like it's embossed. No, like it's sitting on top of the frame, not inside the frame. That's what I'm trying to get at. I also use those same grays to add a little bit of shadows to my paints on my palette to give them a little bit more dimension. So these are just little things that I'm going in, adding those shadows in to help make them look more 3D. So that way when I'm looking at my card, I am happy with the focal point, and my focal point doesn't look exactly the same as the background. So they aren't, like, one stands out from the other. They aren't competing. So anyway, so we still have Bumblebee. So this kind of is all encompassing of all different kinds of crafts, not just card making. And I love that. I never tried crochet. I have seen other people do it, and I think that it is a really beautiful art form. I've just never tried it. I was much more of a cross stitcher. I like seeing the whole picture come together. So for these spools of thread, and then also like the yarn heart and the bundle of yarn in the right hand side, I added shadows. This basically the same thing that we always talk about, where one object lays on top of the other. So we have that spool that the thread is wrapped around, and it wraps around itself. So you're going to have pieces that sit on top and then pieces that sit underneath. The pieces that sit underneath, if you want them to look like they're underneath, then you have to add shadows to them. In order to keep them from being super blobby, you do have to maintain a shadow and a highlight. Because if you let those meld, then it's just going to look like a blobby rectangle. So I'm not going to show you each and every color, but for all of the colors on the paint, I did add a little bit of darkness on the bottom left hand side, because that is where I add my shadows. And I just used one color from each of the color families that's on the paint palette. And for the yarn and the heart, I'm coloring this the same way. So anyway, I think I'm going to get her that stamp set, and maybe I'll send her this card too, if I can ever get myself to take it, to go into the mail. I'm not good about that, because as we talked before, I am like a crafty, creative mess. So I have to rely on my husband. See, this is where it's really important to marry a partner that complements you, because that way they can get stuff done that you cannot. And for me, that is something that I cannot get done. I know that, like, to everybody else, my area looks like just complete chaos, but I do most of the time know where my things are. I know where I left them. So even though it looks like a hurricane and a tornado met in my craft room, mostly over my desk, I still do know where most of my things are. So here I did add just a little bit of shading to the flower to show you how I would do that. But because I know of the detail things that I'm going to do, I don't really need to add the dimension there. And then for this one, it's slightly more involved because there's more areas of yarn that are being wrapped. But other than that, it's the same thing with, adding the shadows in, keeping that separation, of the shadow, midtone, and then highlight color, so that they do stay separate and look dimensional. I just basically picked like a rainbow of colors, and obviously for my focal points, I went with colors that I prefer. You guys know I love a pink. Blue is my boyfriend. I don't necessarily love a purple, but purple did make the most sense for what I was doing here. And then you can see, with this one, I didn't perfectly line up that die. That top right side does have a little bit of a white edge. I'm just going to fill it in with the marker. And even if you're not coloring them, if you don't have a marker you can fill it in with, you could bring your blending brush over to that side and just add that pink back in. And as long as you're light-handed about it, nobody is going to notice that it's not perfection. So here I started kind of messing around with how I wanted to bring everything together. I chose a gray since I had the scissors and the, what is it called? the safety pin. I was gonna say, I just said it. And the safety pin. I did originally try a circle for what but I just didn't like it. And I think it's because I had a circle with the hoop. So I switched over to the vintage labels, and this gave me a much better shape to put my my images, my focal point images on. And so, because again, I'm cheap, I want to make sure that I line up my die on my paper so that I can then use that paper for a different project. And I originally was going to do my white heat embossing on that same gray cardstock, but it just didn't pop off of the page like I wanted it to. So I switched over to black. That's no surprise. Bright colors, white heat embossing on black paper is pretty much like my card recipe at this point. So I treated with my anti-static tool. I stamped it down with our Brilliant White pigment ink. I do like to stamp mine twice, just to make sure that I get a nice impression. And then I went ahead and heat embossed that with some white detail embossing powder, and then cut them out with their coordinating dies. As usual, these do have coordinating dies, like the vast majority of all of our sentiments do. I just think this is such a fun release, and I think you guys are really, really going to enjoy it. I know I am super enjoying it, because it's kind of like one of the things that, like the thing that kind of brings us all together, is that love of crafting and why this community is so wonderful, because a lot of us in real life just don't have people who understand our love of making like we understand each other. And for me, like meeting my neighbor and having her be into that's a rarity for me, because most people in my life are not people who are makers or crafters or anything like that. So here I'm kind of lining it up and getting the general idea of what I wanted, but the white is really was really blending in with the background, and I didn't want to change the background. So I'm going to give myself a border. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to put that die cut back in its die. And then I am going to use a safe, you can use a Copic multi-liner, anything that's going to be safe for alcohol markers. This particular one is an EK Suggest journaling pen, but they've actually been discontinued, which made me sad because they were my favorite. But anyway, I'm going to hold this in place and I'm going to trace around this die. Be aware for any, if the die you're using, not these, because these are pre-clipped, but if you are the clipper of any of your dies, be aware for those parts, because they will throw off how your glide is. So here what I'm doing is I'm putting the cool grays, the warm grays, and a combination of the two kind of next to the paper, the cardstock that I'm using to get a match. What I ended up finding to be a match was putting down the cool gray first, and this is a C5, and then putting the what do they call it? They call it CG. Sorry, I apologize for that. CG5 and WG5. So the cool gray and the warm gray. I put them together and that matched my cardstock pretty well. I did, as I was going through this, I did have an area where I accidentally colored outside of the lines. My marker was just a little bit juicier than expected. And so I'm just going to hide that underneath my embellishments. Again, embellishments can hide a myriad of flaws. So don't give up on what you're working on, because you can find a way to cover it up. So now that I have everything where I want it, I'm going to start the gluing process. So a portion of my sentiment is going to be in the top left, and the finishing portion is going to be in the bottom right underneath all my embellishments. And so I'm kind of gluing and tucking as I go so that I can pull this up as one piece, and then I can glue everything underneath it. I didn't want to have to mess around with rearranging all of them. It's just easier for me to kind of like glue from the top down. And then I tuck those little scissors in. You could do them like so many different colors. I just went with like the gray neutral because I've got a rainbow of colors going on. So here for this is trimmed down just 1/8 of an inch smaller than an A2 card. So I'll just have a very tiny gray border around my card. And then for the vintage label, I'm going to pop that up on foam. That's going to give me kind of another layer of separation so that that white doesn't blend into the background. So we'll have the border that's going to set it apart, and then the height of the foam that helps them to really appear to be two different pieces. And then now that I have all of this glued together as one piece, I can add adhesive to the entirety of it and glue it down right on top of that foam piece. There are pieces down into the bottom right that kind of hang off, but I will be tucking some foam underneath there. I'm not overly worried about it at the moment. I do go back and make sure that I glue down all of my pieces parts since I've kind of, laid them right on top of each other to make sure everything is really secure. And I think I don't know, I love it. It's got all the things. It's got rainbow colors. It's got crafty things. It's got a cute little witty kind of, punny sentiment. And I don't know. It just makes me really, happy. Probably because there's so few things out there that are like specifically for those of us that are, creative, that it makes my heart happy. So here is where I just kind of tucked that foam underneath the sentiment, and then I also tucked it up underneath the yarn a bit. I am adding some clear glitter marker to the yarns and to the what was that? The little watercolor things. I'm adding some white highlights as well, just to add a little bit of interest. And then I decided that there was not nearly enough glitter on my card. So of course I'm going to bring in my Stardust stickles, and those take on the color of whatever is behind them. So I put it on the paint, on the flowers, in the little embroidery hoop. I just thought it was really cute. Like, who wouldn't want a glittery little flower or a glittery little paint set? For the scissors and the crochet needles, crochet hooks. I think we call them crochet hooks. And the thing that I don't know if it's a clasp or not. I don't know if that's the word for it on the embroidery hoop. I did add some glossy accents to those and to the paintbrush, just so that they would have a little bit of extra shine in order to build everything together. And of course, add more glitter because I can't stop myself. I am going to do some rainbow rhinestones, kind of, in an uneven number. It will in uneven number groupings, and just kind of fill in that top left-hand side, so that it's balanced. It's a balanced design. So I hope that you guys are super excited for the upcoming release. Please join me Wednesday for the live at 1 p.m. Eastern time for another sneak peek. Thank you guys so much for your time. I always appreciate it, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.